Welcome back. All right, so as I said, 8 games tonight. Might be a lot to talk about, and here we are. We're back again. So the New Jersey Devils have given out an update on Dougie Hamilton. It's not a great update. Broken jaw for him. He is getting, according to Frank Saravelli, he's getting surgery tomorrow for said broken jaw. So that's going to take him out for quite a while. Broken foot for Nico Hischier. So that's going to take him out for a bit, and hip surgery for Bernier. So Bernier, who, and again, it was seen as a nagging injury kind of thing. Hip surgery for a goaltender can be that can mark that things are maybe winding down, right? So we'll see how the hip surgery goes, whether or not he has any problems after. We've seen just players of various positions, not just goaltenders, but hip surgery can be one of those big question marks, especially when a player's in their 30s and you ask, okay, so how long are they going to be out? What kind of mobility are they going to have when they come back? Is it a surgery that they'll just get once? Are they going to need it again? So a lot of questions here. And I'm wearing a Utica Comets jersey because odds are they're going to have to call some guys up and they're going to have to rely on the depth in the organization now to get them through the next little while here. So it could be a while, and for a New Jersey team that won 3 in a row and felt like maybe they were starting to climb their way back into the playoff chase, this doesn't help. None of this helps. Interesting news with Minnesota. Victor Rask has been waived. Victor Rask off to a slow start. Last year, Kaprizov had very good chemistry with Rask and Zuccarello. This year it's been different. Rask has not been with Kaprizov anywhere near as much. There's been a couple of times I remember seeing them on the ice together. But yeah, Rask waived. I don't see anybody taking that contract. It's an expensive contract. Odds are he ends up with the taxi squad. Interesting news too, Zane McIntyre being signed by the Minnesota Wild because they need some goaltending depth. So Hammond's been called up. Talbot is out indefinitely with a lower body injury. So that's why they signed Zane McIntyre, and he has to get put on waivers, and he will be going to the American Hockey League once he clears, which shouldn't be a problem. Zane McIntyre, veteran goaltender at the American Hockey League level. I don't see anybody putting in a claim on him at the NHL level. So for Minnesota, some rearranging of players and changing of how things are working is going on here. Now, there's some good news, bad news for Toronto, the Toronto-Edmonton game tomorrow. The good news is Matthews is now tested negative. So I didn't talk about it in the news video yesterday, but apparently it tested positive. Retests showed negative. McDavid could be out tomorrow. He wasn't on the ice for practice today, and all that's being said is that it is protocol related, so it could be the same deal too for McDavid. So for Toronto and Edmonton, we're really hoping to see both players in the lineup. I know just personally, I love seeing them against each other. I love seeing Toronto and Edmonton against each other. And yes, I do enjoy seeing the two fan bases arguing with one another because it is enjoyable to watch. Some fan bases, it can get really toxic. Some fan bases, it's just kind of fun. And for me, with the Toronto and Oilers rivalry, which has been there since McDavid and Matthews joined those teams, and those fan bases suddenly had hope where they didn't have any before. It is interesting when they play against each other just to see the fan bases. And of course, last year in the North Division, they met each other a lot. So there's going to be some familiarity. There's going to be some dislike between these teams. And I'm hoping that we do see McDavid and Matthews both in the lineup tomorrow. So Bill Daly, vice president of the league and all that, has said he doesn't see any more Canadian home dates being postponed. Basically, the deal is they've postponed as many as they can realistically, and postponing any more starts to create problems. Remember, the NHL viewed April 29th as the absolute end date of the season. That being said, would I be surprised if it maybe goes into the first week of May? Not really, no. At this point, I would not be entirely surprised. So they're hoping that they're done with the postponements for the most part. They are saying that they're probably at about their limit of how many games can be postponed before they're looking at either expanding the season beyond April 29th or whatever other options they may have. And so he thinks that that's probably done for now. So, we'll see. Fingers crossed on that, right? Just as a note for everybody to wonder, so how long is it until the trade deadline? I looked it up, March 21st. It's 76 days off till the trade deadline. I mentioned that because I saw an article today on John Klingberg and whether or not Dallas might look to trade him. And I get the feeling that, honestly, if Dallas is not in a good position for the playoffs, Klingberg probably gets traded. If Dallas is in a position where they could or should make the playoffs at around the trade deadline, I think they keep Klingberg. He's going to be one of those interesting ones to watch, though, because I'm not sure how much money you throw at Klingberg. It feels kind of like Dougie Hamilton in Carolina, just not quite at the same level, as I don't think Dallas is a contender in the same way that Carolina is, obviously. But if you throw too much money and too much term at him, I think you regret it. And I think that's the issue the general managers are starting to really look at. Pietrangelo in St. Louis comes to mind too. It would have been great for Pietrangelo to stay in St. Louis, but ultimately from a cap perspective, it would have probably backfired on the Blues. So they let him go and they picked up Krug instead and saved some money there. So I think there's going to be some questions like that about players. I'm using Klingberg as an example, but I think there's going to be some others too. Johnny Gaudreau is going to be one to watch, and if they decide to keep Gaudreau, then Monahan, to me, becomes the one that very well could end up on his way out. When I did the Calgary video yesterday, I didn't talk about Monahan because he's not producing. Monahan has not been much of a contributor to what has been a very good first 30 games for Calgary, which is remarkable because Monahan was really a key player for them for years before that, but now he's not. So it's interesting, and we'll see how things develop. But we've got a little under 11 weeks until it's done, and we haven't seen really any movement. The Eichel trade was big and all, but outside of that, there really hasn't been any movement this season, and I'm not sure when it's going to happen either. We'll see. Interesting thing with the New York Rangers. So the Rangers and their fans right now feeling really good. What's interesting to me is before the break, they lost 4 out of 6. They really seemed to be a little bit out of sync, and they weren't playing their best. Coming out of the break, they've won 3 out of 4. And they're just one example of teams taking that break, and I think the Rangers did a good job of resetting things. And clearly, as they sit number 1 right now, it's worked out pretty well so far. It will be interesting to see how many teams turn things around with the break, how many teams were doing really well going into the break, struggle coming out of it. And again, with how long these breaks are, it is really unpredictable as to who's going to do well and who's not. You can barely see. I always find it weird that the New Jersey logo on this is black on black. I don't. Again, I find that odd. You'll notice Shadow turned into a rabbit. So yeah, they've won 3 out of 4 since the break. We'll see how the Rangers do. Paul Kariya is part of a GM search. So Scott Niedermayer for the Anaheim Ducks. So they've got their official committee for the search for the new GM. With Montreal and Vancouver looking for a new GM, and Vancouver looking to completely change the organization, as I think Montreal is too. In Anaheim, it feels like this is just a pure GM search. And so having Kariya and Niedermayer part of it, I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. So we'll see who they come up with. There's going to be a lot of speculation. I think that at least one of the 3 GMs will probably be somebody who's been a GM before, but I always like it when it's somebody new. So I'm crossing my fingers that all 3 teams bring in somebody that maybe isn't that well known, maybe an assistant general manager. In Vancouver, I know Alvin is seen as probably the front runner, but Scott Mellenby being seen as a front runner, I've got my fingers crossed that Scott Mellenby gets the job. Personally, from Vancouver standpoint, and we'll see what Anaheim does. And with Kariya and Niedermayer being a part of that, might they have somebody that they interview who they also played with, that they say, yes, this guy would be very good. It could be somebody maybe who played in New Jersey with Niedermayer, somebody who played in Anaheim with Kariya, or St. Louis, or wherever, right? And the other thing that's going to be interesting to me is with all 3 teams doing GM searches, do some GM candidates overlap between teams? So you'll see Anaheim and Vancouver interviewing the same guys. Will that happen? And for Montreal, where Francophone is really important, will we see some guys being interviewed by Montreal that are interviewed by other teams as well, right? So yeah, we'll see what happens. There you go. This should be the last news video of the day. Should be. Possibly, probably, maybe. And the next video around, maybe we'll have Shadow back on the tree. But this little guy is a handful. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.